I used to think I had been switched at birth, that something must have gone wrong at the hospital and I was mistakenly given to a family where love was reserved for someone else. That someone was Clarissa, my younger sister. As for me, I was just a shadow, an extra piece in the very home that was supposed to be mine. Once I asked my mother, "Do you love me?" She replied with a vague smile and then called Clarissa down to have a slice of her favorite apple pie. My name is Savannah Whitmore. I was born and raised in Boca Raton, Florida. I'm the eldest of two sisters. My mom, Elaine, was an elementary school teacher, and my dad, Travis, worked as an engineer for a highway design firm. To the outside world, we looked like the perfect family postcard: red tile roof house, flowers blooming in the front yard, and dinners with all four of us, at least from the outside. But behind that picture was a haunting truth I carried all through childhood, a cold kind of favoritism, sweet like poison. I remember my 7th birthday like it was yesterday, the day I thought I'd finally be the center of attention. I had wished for a purple bike with a flower basket on the front and a bell that went ding ding. My parents actually gave me that bike. I screamed with joy, riding laps around the backyard like the whole world belonged to me. But 2 days later, Clarissa, then just 5, threw a tantrum, saying she wanted to ride the bike. My mom stroked her hair and turned to me, more like giving an order than asking. "You're the older sister, you should share. Clarissa's still little, she needs to feel loved." I didn't really understand what that meant, just that the next morning the name tag on my bike was peeled off and replaced with one that said Clarissa. I sat by the window, watching my sister ride it up and down the stone path with a big smile, while I had nothing but flip-flops and a lump in my throat. When I was 9, the school offered a summer swimming course at the local sports center. I begged my parents to sign me up. I imagined the cool water, the rush of diving off the edge like the girls in Disney movies. But my mom shook her head. "No, I already signed Clarissa up for ballet. The tuition's expensive, Savannah. Just play at home." Clarissa, only 6, could barely balance on her toes. But if she wanted something, the path would be cleared. I never learned to swim that year, or any year after that. In 5th grade, I was chosen to give a speech for our Teacher Appreciation Day. My teacher said I had a strong, clear, confident voice. I proudly shared the news at dinner, eyes sparkling, hoping my parents would come. Dad flipped a page of his newspaper and mumbled, "Oh, that's nice. But Clarissa has her first piano recital that week. We all have to be there for her." So they didn't come. I stood on stage and delivered my speech to a crowd of hundreds of parents. When I bowed, no one from my family was there to clap. Strangely, when I succeeded, they were silent, but when my sister simply walked without tripping, they cheered. Anything I had, a new pencil case, a comic book, even a denim jacket I picked out myself, if Clarissa showed interest, it was taken away from me, and the reason was always, "You're the older sister, you should give it up." That phrase became an unspoken law in our house, as if being older meant less important, not allowed to want, and not worth caring for. In high school, I once asked to enroll in an art class because I loved colors and the freedom in drawing, but Mom said no. "You know Clarissa is in dance class. My schedule's too packed to drive both of you." By then I was used to rejection, but that time I asked, "Would things be different if Clarissa were the older one?" She looked at me, blinked once, and looked away. No answer. When Clarissa turned 15, my parents threw her a birthday party at a garden hotel. Live band, string lights everywhere. For my 17th, Mom bought me a small grocery store cake and left it in the fridge, with a note, "I'm home late from teaching. Go ahead and eat first." I sliced the cake and blew out the candles alone. No one saw what I wished for that day. But if you ask me now, I still remember the wish. I wished to be strong enough to leave one day. I left home 3 weeks after my 18th birthday. No hug, no goodbye, just a note from my mom on the table. "Don't forget to call when you arrive." I didn't call. The school I chose was in San Diego, over 2,000 miles away from Florida. A distance wide enough to breathe, wide enough to begin again. I got into the University of California with a partial scholarship in international business and told myself, Savannah, this is your life. For the first time, you get to own it. The dorm was tiny, the room stuffy. My roommate played loud music at 2:00 AM, but I had never been happier, because every day wasn't a battle to be seen. One Saturday afternoon in early fall, I wandered into the campus rec area, looking for a club that might help me stretch out a little, just like a classmate had joked. I wasn't planning to join anything, just browsing. Then I heard waves, not from far away, but from a video playing on a big screen in the surf club booth. A group of students were laughing, cheering, showing beach clips, sunshine, and epic wipeouts on the water. "Wanna try?" a voice said from behind me. I turned around. He was tall, sun-kissed, his hair tousled by the wind. His eyes smiled before his mouth did. "You just need to know how to swim." I stiffened and admitted honestly, "I've never learned." He raised his eyebrows but didn't laugh. "Even better. Fewer bad habits." "I'm Beckett, team captain." His name was Beckett Hayes, a junior in sports science, the kind of guy who could talk and lift a surfboard with one hand like it was nothing. I thought he was just another attention seeker, but oddly enough, throughout the whole session, he watched every newcomer patiently, never yelled. With me, he said just two things. "Let the waves carry you. Don't fight them." I fell 10 times in the first 10 minutes. Swallowed water, choked, eyes burned, arms stiff as wood. I nearly gave up. Then I heard him shout, "Savannah, don't focus on the fall. Look at what makes you want to get back up." For the first time in my life, someone wasn't asking what I could do for others, but what I wanted for myself. After the session, Beckett handed me a towel. I sat shaking on the sand. He sat down beside me, didn't ask polite questions, just said, I used to fall flat on my face all freshman summer." I laughed, like something in my chest finally softened. In the weeks that followed, I kept surfing regularly. At first, it was because I wanted to get better, but honestly, eventually it was because I wanted to hear Beckett speak whenever I fell. He didn't give cliché pep talks. He looked me in the eyes and said things that made me believe I was strong. That winter, we officially started dating. No flowers, no ring. Just one chilly afternoon after surfing in the rain, I lay with my head on his arm and mumbled, "Will you still be here when I'm no longer cute?" Beckett frowned and brushed the hair from my face. "Savannah, you're the only person I know who can free fall in the waves and still climb back up. Isn't that cute enough?" We loved each other like two people on the run, one escaping rejection, the other escaping expectations. He used to be a competitive swimmer, once Olympic-bound, but gave it all up to live by the sea. His family never forgave him. He understood me in a way no one else ever had. The year I graduated, we decided to start a small business. The idea came from what had brought us together in the first place, water sports. We called the company Blue Horizon Trading. The model was simple at first, importing surfboards, swimsuits, and life vests from Japan and Australia to distribute to local surf clubs. We had almost no capital. I worked 2 part-time jobs, and Beckett borrowed from an uncle in Oregon. Our first office was the living room of our 1-bedroom apartment. Our desk was a foldable dining table. Our planning board was taped to the wall with masking tape. The printer sounded like it might explode every time we printed an invoice. But we never fought about money. "As long as you don't run," Beckett said when a major supplier canceled a deal on us last minute, "I can handle a whole year of starving." I laughed through tears. I had spent an entire childhood craving someone who would stay. Now I had someone who didn't just stay. He jumped into the ocean of life with me, no life jacket in sight. 2 years later, the business turned profitable. Beckett expanded our network among amateur athletes. I handled the e-commerce side and sourced exclusive items from niche brands. Our name started appearing on water sports forums. And then I found an abandoned wooden house on a hillside in southern La Jolla. The roof was rotting, the railings crooked, but the ocean stretched out in front of it. waves crashing below, and I knew this was where we'd write the next chapter. Beckett stood beside me, held my hand, and asked just one question. Want to fix it up together? I nodded. No more words were needed. There are moments in life when you know you're stepping into a whole new chapter. Not because there's music playing, or fireworks, or champagne, but because your heart falls into an eerie stillness. That morning, I stood on the second floor balcony of an old beach house in Del Mar, wind tossing my hair, and Beckett just whispered, "Savannah, this place breathes like you." I didn't have to think. Didn't ask for the price. We had found the home our dreams had been waiting for. The house wasn't glamorous. The roof had faded from sea salt, the stairs creaked with every step, the kitchen had little more than a rusty outlet and an old sink. But through the large glass window you could see the ocean, deep blue, untamed, and free. Just like me, after years of breaking free from the shadow called Clarissa. We bought the house with all the savings we had from 5 years of running Blue Horizon, plus a small bank loan. No one supported us, especially not my family. When my mom found out, she exclaimed over the phone, "A beach house? Savannah, are you delusional? That's not how grown-ups invest." I let out a dry laugh. I'm not investing in real estate, I'm investing in my life. My dad only said one thing. Clarissa would never do something that stupid. I replied simply, "Exactly, and I'd never blow my tuition money on a Gucci purse and call that maturity." I hung up. Since moving into the house, I stopped calling home. No birthdays, no Thanksgivings, no Christmases. I no longer owed them my presence. We fixed the house ourselves. Every night after work, Beckett and I took turns sanding floors, painting walls, installing kitchen shelves. On weekends, we'd bring sandwiches to the balcony and eat with paint-stained hands and waves crashing below. One rainy night, the roof leaked right over the bed. I burst out laughing while Beckett cursed under his breath, but still climbed up there at midnight, soaking wet, muttering, "Nothing's allowed to ruin this place." The house slowly came to life. We expanded the living room with sliding glass doors facing the sea. The kitchen was redone with white tile, where I learned to make my first butternut squash soup without burning it. My upstairs corner became my home office, where I signed our first exclusive swimwear deal with an Australian brand. We didn't just build a house, we rebuilt ourselves. A year after we moved in, our company officially made it onto the top 50 fastest-growing water sports brands on the West Coast. I was invited to speak at the annual Sports Commerce Conference in Los Angeles. Beckett got interviewed by Outdoor Sports Weekly. We no longer worked out of a cramped apartment. Our headquarters now sat in Venice Beach, complete with a design team, marketing crew, and 3 interns, who all called me Boss Lady with a grin. But the house in Del Mar remained the heart of it all. Every Friday night, I'd sit on the balcony, a cup of hot tea in hand, gazing out at the waves crashing against the rocks, thinking of the little girl Savannah once was, the one who used to eat birthday cake alone in the kitchen. Beckett would usually come out later, sit beside me, and whisper, "You made it." I thought my life had finally settled. I thought after all the fighting, the letting go, the building, and the moving on, I would finally be safe in the happiness I had carved out with my own hands. Until one spring morning, just as I returned from a business trip in Oregon, my phone rang. It was my mom, after almost 2 years of silence. I picked up, guarded. "Are you home?" Her voice was urgent, like she was trying to hide something. "What's going on?" I asked, glancing out the office window, where morning light was streaking across the wooden floor. "Your dad, he handled the house in Del Mar. It's being transferred next month." I froze. "What did you just say?" "Clarissa is in trouble. She was scammed into a bad investment. Your father signed a contract to sell the house because she needs $180,000 to pay off her debt." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My lips went dry and my fingers clutched the phone so tightly I thought it might shatter. "That house, it's under my name and Beckett's. How is Mom planning to sell it?" Silence on the other end. A long, terrifying silence. I gripped the chair arm, my voice lower than the wind, colder than the ocean breeze. "Did Mom forge my signature?" No response, but I already knew. No wave out there could match the storm inside my chest at that moment. I stepped out onto the balcony, eyes locked on the ocean, but my mind was spinning in a whirlpool with no escape. Sell the house? Transfer ownership? Clarissa? In debt? No, no way. I picked up the phone and called my dad. He answered after 3 rings. I just spoke to Mom, I said, my voice sharp like steel. Tell me, is it true? He didn't try to dodge. Maybe he knew lying wouldn't work anymore. Savannah, I thought you'd understand. Clarissa didn't mean to. She got tricked. If we don't help her, those debt collectors won't leave her alone. And your solution was to sell our house? I snapped. The place Beckett and I poured our blood, sweat, and dreams into? He didn't reply. I could hear his heavy breathing through the phone, and then his voice broke. Family helps each other. I let out a harsh, twisted laugh, void of any mercy. Family? Since when? Since the day Mom gave my birthday present to Clarissa? Since the day you said my A+ didn't matter as much as her face when she got a B-? Or since the day you froze my savings so she could go to Paris to find artistic inspiration? The silence on the line was suffocating. I spoke slowly, my voice shaking with fury. How did you sign a transfer contract without my signature? That house is co-owned, Savannah Whitmore and Beckett Hayes. I never gave power of attorney, neither did Beckett. Dad hesitated, and in that brief pause, I knew it was all true. We had copies of your signature from the loan documents last year. Same with Beckett's. An old friend of mine works at the notary's office. He helped process it. I sank into the wooden chair on the porch, my head buzzing. My hands trembled, not from the money, but from the sheer, shameless betrayal. You broke the law, I said, word by word. This is fraud, forgery for an illegal transaction, and I will not stay silent. His voice suddenly hissed through the speaker. Are you threatening your own parents? This is a family matter. You don't take your family to court. I stood up, the wind whipping across my face. No, this is no longer a family matter. This is a crime, and you can't hide behind the word family to destroy someone else's life. I hung up. The wind howled as if it were screaming all the things I couldn't yet shout. I called Beckett right after. He was in a meeting at the office. His voice was strangely calm after hearing the whole story. Let me handle the buyer. You call the lawyer, Beckett said. If they haven't finalized the transfer, we can still stop it. I didn't ask him how, I just believed. 2 hours later, he called back. The buyer is an old friend. Dylan from my Boy Scouts group. I told him everything. He agreed to pause the transaction, no wire transfers, no further signatures. It felt like a boulder lifted off my chest. But my part remained. Lawyers, police, formal complaints, and worst of all, doing this against my own parents. That afternoon, I sat outside the attorney's office with Beckett, clutching a folder that held illegal documents a whistleblower in the real estate agency had sent me anonymously. The signatures looked chillingly real, but they weren't mine. I never wrote with rounded loops like that. And Beckett's? The Beckett Hayes on the forms had 2 hook strokes he never used. We filed the lawsuit at the San Diego Police Department that same day. A formal investigation was launched. Within 3 days, both my mother and father were summoned for suspected forgery and real estate fraud. Clarissa, of course, remained silent. No apology, no sign of regret. That evening, Beckett and I sat on the balcony, sunset casting a rose hue over the sea. Are you okay? He asked, gently squeezing my hand. I nodded, but my throat tightened. I never thought family could be this heartless. They tried to take everything. But they couldn't, Beckett said, because this, he pointed to the house behind us, isn't just wood and walls. It's a living dream. They can't touch it unless you let them. I looked at him, at a shoulder that never turned away, at someone who didn't care how strong I was, because he was willing to stand in front of me when I wasn't. I knew the battle wasn't over. My family wouldn't stay quiet. They would cry, beg, blame, and call it sacrifice for your sister. But this time, I wasn't the girl eating birthday cake alone in the kitchen anymore. This time, I would stand up. I never imagined walking into the San Diego Police Department as a plaintiff, with my own parents being the ones under investigation. But this was real. There was no space for tears, and no room to turn back. When the officer asked why I was pressing charges, I answered directly. I had no choice. They forged my signature and illegally sold property that belonged to me and my fiancé. He looked up at me, furrowed his brow briefly, then nodded, perhaps used to cases where family became the accused. News of the incident spread fast. I don't know how, but just 1 week later, Aunt Rose, my mom's younger sister, called. Savannah, do you really want to send your parents to jail? I'm not the one sending them there. They did that themselves when they decided to defraud me. Her voice cracked. But their family. I was beyond tired of hearing that. Auntie, because they're family, they shouldn't be allowed to destroy me and call it love. I hung up, then turned off my phone. I knew there would be more calls, relatives, old friends, maybe even former teachers texting things like, "You should forgive," or "Is one house really worth it?" But none of them lived my childhood. None of them had things they loved taken away. None were compared to a destructive sibling constantly cast as the victim. They had no right to speak. 3 days later, my parents were officially summoned by the police. I was present at the station to clarify details regarding the forged signatures, the purpose of the transfer, and the financial sources involved. My lawyer, a sharp-nosed, soft-spoken Indian woman, came with me. She said just one thing. Don't let your emotions get in the way. You're the victim here. When I walked out of the interrogation room, I saw my mother standing in the hallway. Her hair was a mess, her eyes red, her face pale from sleepless nights. My father sat slumped on a bench, head bowed like a man who had just been skinned alive. Mom rushed over and grabbed my hand. Savannah, please, can't you stop this? I'm begging you. I looked at her, not pulling my hand away, but I didn't hold hers either. You knew how much that house meant to me. You knew Beckett and I spent years building it, and you still chose to sell it. No questions, no conversations, just forged signatures and called it helping your little girl. She wept. Clarissa isn't like you. She's fragile. She can't handle failure the way you can. I gave a bitter laugh. She's fragile because you've spent her whole life catching her every fall. What about me, Mom? Whoever caught me? She said nothing. A tear rolled down her cheek. I pulled my hand back. I won't back down, because if I don't stand up now, there will be a next time, and another after that. I turned and walked away, leaving behind a woman who had once meant everything to me, but now was just someone who crushed her own daughter to save the other. That night, I returned to the house. Beckett was sitting in the kitchen with a cold cup of coffee. He looked at me, not with pity or questions. He just quietly handed me a sheet of paper. It was a copy of the police report. According to the preliminary investigation, my parents had planned the house sale 3 months earlier, contacted a private notary office, and submitted forged power of attorney documents. In the paperwork sent to the buyer, they claimed Beckett and I were relocating abroad for long-term work and had no need to retain the home. They even told the neighbors, Beckett said softly, that you burned through our investments and were drowning in credit card debt, so they had to sell the house to save us. I froze. Not with anger, just with a deep, sinking hollowness. They didn't just betray me. They slandered me to justify their crime. Savannah, Beckett pulled me into a hug. You didn't do anything wrong. You did what was right. I rested my head on his shoulder. For the first time in years, I cried. Not from pain, but because I had finally been strong enough to protect my boundaries. The next morning, I woke up to an email from our lawyer's office. The case had officially moved to the prosecution phase. My parents would face trial on 2 primary charges: forging legal documents and committing property fraud. I finished reading and took a deep breath. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Some things you simply cannot let slide, even when they come from the people you once called Mom and Dad. 3 days after I filed the complaint, as the sky was turning dark, Beckett came home. His face looked calm, but I saw the tension behind his eyes. He took off his jacket, walked straight to the balcony where I sat, hugged me from behind, and whispered, The sale was canceled, Savannah. No one's taking this house from us. It was like the weight crushing my chest finally lifted. My whole body felt cold, but for the first time, my heart felt warm. What did they say? I asked softly. Dylan, the one who was going to buy it. He's an old classmate from high school. When I told him the truth, he was speechless. He immediately called the notary office to cancel everything. Beckett paused, then added, and he gave me a recording of your parents. They met with Dylan and his wife twice. During the first meeting, they said you had mental issues, could manage money, and I had fled the country due to bankruptcy. I stiffened. They said that the house was a burden, that they were granted full authority by their daughter, that they needed to sell quickly because both kids had hit rock bottom, you and me. Savannah and Beckett were painted as a couple falling apart from failure. I laughed dryly. There were no tears left. So, it wasn't just forged signatures. They fabricated everything to justify their actions. Beckett sat across from me and held my hand tightly. We're going to bring all of it into the light. The documents Dylan sent were later attached to the lawsuit by our lawyer. They included the audio recording along with a summary of emails, one in which my father tried to accelerate the sale by claiming the young couple had left without providing contact details. The San Diego police formed a dedicated team to investigate forged documents, false statements, and character defamation. On the fourth day, they visited the notary office where the property transfer had been signed and discovered that one employee had been bribed to overlook the discrepancies. What they found during the office search hit me like a punch to the gut. A scanned copy of my signature from our 2021 loan documents, alongside a handwritten forgery of Beckett's. All of it stored in a folder labeled Clarissa_recovery_plan. Beckett went silent when he read that name. They did all this just to save someone who refuses to stand up on her own. The case started gaining attention from local news outlets when the notary involved was exposed for connections to multiple shady transactions. A reporter from the Coastline Gazette called asking for an interview. I declined. I didn't do this for publicity. I did it because if I didn't protect my life, no one else would. That evening, I received a text from an unknown number, just 4 words. You're a traitor. I knew it was Clarissa. I didn't respond, but Beckett, who saw the message, looked at me and asked, "Do you regret it?" I looked out at the ocean, waves crashing against the rocks below the cliff, fierce and relentless. If I had stayed silent, next time it wouldn't just be the house. It would be the company, it would be you, it would be our whole future. Beckett nodded. He understood, because he had been hurt by his family too. We sat close in silence, the wind fluttering the curtain and the glow of the kitchen light reflecting on the glass door like a reminder, the truth cannot be hidden forever. The next morning, the police invited me to speak with the lead investigator, a Korean-American woman named Eun-ji. Her voice was low, firm, without comfort or judgment. Are you ready to face a public trial? The press has already identified all parties. The property is worth nearly $2 million. This won't be private anymore. I looked her straight in the eyes. I've been ready since the moment they forged my signature. She nodded and handed me a witness statement form. This case will go all the way. No settlements, no quiet payouts. If they broke the law, they'll be convicted. I signed. Every stroke of ink was a cut across the mask labeled family, the one they had used to hide their toxic behavior all my life. As I stepped out of the police station, I lifted my head to the clouded sky. The cold wind whipped against my skin, but I didn't flinch. I knew that from now on, I would no longer be the one who bowed, who gave in, who stayed silent just to keep the peace. I would be Savannah, the woman who no longer stays quiet in the face of betrayal wrapped in family ties. 1 year after I pressed charges against my parents, the final verdict was delivered, 18 months probation for both of them, plus court fees, civil damages, and a 5-year ban from any financial representation activities. The police didn't prosecute Clarissa due to lack of direct evidence, but everyone knew where it all began. The Whitmore family officially collapsed. The old house in Boca Raton, where I grew up, where I once cried over a stolen birthday bike, where I watched my mother hold Clarissa during dinners I wasn't invited to, was repossessed by the bank just 3 months after the trial. No one could pay off the reverse mortgage secretly tied to the expected sale of my house. My father, once chief engineer at an infrastructure firm in Palm Beach, was let go after the news broke. He tried working as a delivery driver for a retail company, but collapsed mid-shift from exhaustion. I heard he has high blood pressure, no insurance, and is self-medicating with lower dose prescriptions. My mother didn't fare better. She worked 3 jobs a day, cleaning a storage warehouse in the morning, boxing food in a processing plant in the afternoon, and cashiering at a 24-hour grocery store at night. A former neighbor called Aunt Rose and said, "She's skin and bones now, hunched over, her hair turned completely gray within months." And Clarissa? She still lived as if nothing had ever happened. I received an email from her one morning in March. The subject line was blank. The message said only one sentence: "You're the reason this family fell apart." I didn't respond. 2 days later, another message came, longer this time, filled with vicious accusations. "Everyone's suffering because of you. If you hadn't gone to the cops, we could have settled this within the family. Now Dad has to sell his blood, Mom's about to collapse, all because of that stupid beach house. It should have been the tool that saved me. You're selfish to the core, Savannah." I handed my phone to Beckett without a word. He read it, then shook his head. "She still doesn't get it." No, she never wanted to. I looked into it further and found out after losing nearly $200,000 in that last scam, Clarissa had continued chasing shady startup ventures and pyramid schemes. She even took out high-interest loans from predatory lenders. Her name was flagged on Florida's credit watch list, but she kept trying to open new accounts under proxies. Once, an old friend of Beckett's said he spotted her at a nightclub in Miami on the arm of an older man, stepping out of a rented sports car. Clarissa called it a strategic investment connection. Despite being financially devastated, my parents still secretly supported her using money they earned through grueling work. I learned this when my lawyer received a tip from a small bank. My mother had been transferring $250 every week to Clarissa, like it was an unwritten obligation. When I asked Aunt Rose directly, she just sighed. "Your mom said even if she starves, she won't let Clarissa end up on the street." I gave a cold laugh. "And what about me, when they tried to sell my house and destroy my reputation on legal documents? Did they wonder where I would end up?" She didn't answer. The apartment my parents now rent is on the outskirts of Hialeah, near an old industrial park. I happened to pass by during a business trip in that area, just a glimpse, but enough to see my mother quietly stepping off a bus, carrying 2 bags full of discounted groceries, her face sunken, eyes dull, and shoulders slumped, like she was bearing the weight of every regret. She saw me. For a second, her eyes lit up, not with joy, but with shame, pain, and bitterness. I didn't stop. I didn't speak. I walked right past her, as if she were a stranger on the street. Later, a friend who works in community legal aid told me my father collapsed during an overnight shift and was rushed to the ER. When he woke up, the first thing he did wasn't ask the doctor. He called Clarissa. Clarissa didn't visit. She was busy signing a new deal in Las Vegas. That quote came from her Facebook post, pictured in front of a 5-star hotel, champagne in hand, captioned, "To everyone who ever doubted me, watch me rise." I turned off my phone. I didn't want to see another second. Beckett looked at me and asked, "If she goes bankrupt, if your parents die from exhaustion, would you help?" I looked at him, my eyes no longer uncertain like they once were. I used to try to save all 3 of them by staying silent, by giving in, and by forgiving. And what did that lead to? A suspended sentence, a broken apartment, and a fame addict who doesn't know when to stop. I paused for a moment, then said, "No, I won't save them anymore. They have to save themselves, or face the consequences." Beckett didn't say anything. He just stepped forward and hugged me from behind, as gently as waves brushing against stone, but I knew he understood. Because he had once stood on that edge too, where the people you love are no longer your shelter, but the wound that won't stop bleeding. I never thought I'd open a message from my family again, But on an October afternoon when the ocean felt like it was whispering softly in my ear, I did. A letter from my mother. Not handwritten, it was an email, short, plain, with no images, and only a few clipped sentences. I don't expect you to forgive me. I know what your father and I did can't be undone. But if there's any part of you that still believes we were once a family, send me the address of a place that can help us find what's left. I'm tired. Really tired. I read it over and over. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. The only thing that rose in me was silence. I didn't call back. Instead, I forwarded the email to Beckett, along with a single message. I won't save them, but I won't turn my back on someone who's drowning. 3 days later, I mailed a thick envelope to my parents' last known address. Inside was detailed information about a community mental health program in Miami, a hotline for financial abuse within families, and a $300 grocery store gift card. No sender name, no personal note. I don't know if they received it. I'm not waiting for a reply. Because forgiveness, to me, no longer means restoring a relationship. Forgiveness means not letting hatred define the rest of my life. Beckett appeared at the balcony doorway with 2 smoothies in hand, his eyes bright in the sunset glow, his voice warm. I just spoke with the Waves for Kids organization. They're really excited about your idea. I smiled and took the smoothie. I just called the district education office. They agreed to partner with us to bring underprivileged students to Del Mar during summer break. It was a plan we had long dreamed of, a program combining water sports and emotional therapy for children from disadvantaged or emotionally scarred families. Kids who had stayed quiet for far too long. Kids like me. The beachside house, once nearly sold out of greed and family decay, would now become the beginning of a new chapter of hope. We called it the Second Wave Project. We started by turning the backyard into a small training ground for paddleboarding and basic surfing, adding a shed to store boards, life jackets, and safety gear. One of the living rooms was converted into a learning and gathering space where kids could draw, write, or simply sit together without being judged. In the first month, 8 children joined. All came from local public elementary schools. Some had recently lost a parent, some lived with grandparents, some had suffered emotional abuse within their own homes. One little girl with short black hair named Riley left a lasting impression. She didn't speak a word for the first 3 days, just stared at the ocean, her eyes vacant like a lost soul. But on Wednesday afternoon, when Beckett shouted, "Waves are up. Who wants to try for the first time?" Riley was the first to step forward. I held her hand as she stepped into the water. The wind was gentle, the waves not too strong, just enough to challenge a beginner. When she stood on the board for only a few seconds before falling in, I saw a light in her eyes. "I stood up, didn't I?" she asked, her voice shaking. I nodded and patted her shoulder. "And next time you'll stand even longer." That night I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't touched in years. Today, a stranger taught me that life can begin exactly where you once thought it ended. And today, I forgave my mother, not with words, but by turning wounds into action. Beckett walked into the room holding his laptop. "The official website for the Second Wave just got approved. We can start fundraising." I looked at him, smiled, and said nothing, but one thing I knew for sure. We were no longer the 2 people who nearly lost everything to betrayal. We were the 2 people who chose not to let the pain end with us. By the 3rd month, a reporter from the San Diego Chronicle came to interview us. She asked me, "Why children?" I didn't have to think long. Because children are often the last ones asked what they want, and the first ones forgotten when a family makes the wrong choice. She nodded and quietly took notes. I knew she understood. One late afternoon at year's end, with the sunset painting the horizon purple, Beckett placed a hand on my shoulder. "Savannah, do you have any regrets?" I looked out at the sea, where Riley and the others were kicking up water, laughing like they had never carried pain. I shook my head. "No, I just wish I had done this sooner." And in that fading light, I understood something deeper than any courtroom ever revealed. Forgiveness is not erasure. Forgiveness is choosing not to let the past pollute someone else's future, especially the future of children who haven't yet lived their full childhoods. Savannah's story is a powerful reminder that family ties cannot justify betrayal and manipulation. She found the strength to stand up for herself, even when faced with judgment and isolation. For her, forgiveness wasn't about returning, it was about not allowing pain to spread further. In a world full of family wounds, Savannah's actions show that true love sometimes means setting boundaries and turning pain into a chance to heal others. What do you think about Savannah's decision? Would you have chosen differently in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt and powerful stories about family and healing.